Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Discover Wildlife talk this evening. Tonight, I'm joined by my colleague Helen Bryon, who I was speaking to just before this, who's full of beans and raring to go tonight. She's very excited to talk to you about Indonesia, and all of the wonderful wildlife that you can find there. She's visited on a couple of occasions, and most recently she was there at the end of last year. So. She's well refreshed. She's ready to talk to you about it. And yeah, lots of interesting stuff to come. As always, feel free to ask questions throughout using the Q&A function or the chat function. And I will present some of those questions to Helen at the end if I can't answer them myself as we go through the presentation. Um, and there'll also be a poll at the end. Helen will talk to you about some of the trips that we offer. And you can then, when we launch the poll, select trips that you would like to receive more details about, and we will get those sent out to you. So I think that covers everything from me for now. So without further ado, over to Helen.
Lovely. Thank you, Jordan. He is the king of the puns. I've just I've just wolfed my dinner down and it happened to be bean casserole, hence me being full of beans. Boom tish, sorry. And on that note, let's get professional. Right. Okay, so I am literally just back from my travels in Antarctica and I am really looking forward to revisiting rather warmer climes by taking you through a trip that I was lucky enough to do at the end of last year. My word, it was phenomenal. Indonesia, I had visited a couple of times before, as Jordan said. However, there were certain key wildlife elements that were missing. Whale sharks being one. I was super keen to try and swim with them again if I could, following experiences in Baja. I was also super keen to try and see Komodo dragons. And finally, I really wanted to see birds of paradise. And this one in particular, the Wilsons. Ever since Attenborough introduced me to birds of paradise many years ago, they have been long on my wish list. There was one other element that I wanted to see, and that was Raja Ampat. So when I found a trip that visited Raja Ampat, as well as offering the opportunity to potentially see whale sharks, Komodo dragons, and birds of paradise, I jumped at it. And it was this one, Indonesia Wildlife Highlights. You'll find it on our website. And as Jordan said, we will be giving a poll at the end of the trip, so you can request extra information on it. And it was aboard the wonderful Heritage Adventurer, a purpose-built expedition, polar expedition primarily vessel that repositions between the North Pacific and the South Pacific on an annual basis and goes through the Indonesian archipelago every October. So last year, I was fortunate enough to be on it. So in a nutshell, what this trip actually involved was embarkation in Bali, following an excellent cooking school, I might add, and 17 nights later, arriving on the north coast of Papua New Guinea at a very small little town called Madang. From there, we flew by 2 charter aircraft down to Cairns in Australia and continued with our travels or ventured home. So our 17 nights on board took us through some really unknown areas. Now, Indonesia is an archipelago of between 17 and 18,000 islands. It's on the convergence of 3 or sometimes 4, depending who you speak to, tectonic plates. So it's got some incredible volcanic scenery, and the islands range from paradise bounty type islands right the way through to much larger ones. So as we headed in an easterly direction, we came through Flores, where we saw the Komodo dragons. We came up into Wakatobi and then through the islands of Buru and Seram into magical Raja Ampat. And from there, we traversed the north coast of West Papua. That's where we saw our whale sharks, and then all the way across that northern coast into Papua New Guinea, where we spent our last 2 nights and 1 full day with the people of the Sepik River. It was fabulous. So there were a couple of other things that really attracted me to this particular part of the world. I have long been a fan of Wallace. Wallace, the line, the biogeographical boundary, established really in the late 1800s between fauna that is decidedly Asian and fauna that is decidedly Australian to the east of the Wallace line, named after the wonderful William Russell Wallace, who was a British naturalist. He started off as a surveyor, he went into teaching, and then he spent 4 years in the Amazon collecting species, getting that absolute fascination for the natural world. And then he visited what was then called the Malay archipelago between the years of 1854 to 1862. He collected thousands and thousands of specimens. He found thousands of new specimens at that point unknown to Western science. And he was the one who, following, working really not alongside Darwin, but certainly in terms of time frame, very much working alongside Darwin. In fact, he wrote to Darwin in 1858 to advise that he felt that the origin of species and evolution was very much a sound theory, only to have Darwin publish on the origin of species just 1 year later. But they were great friends, they were great advocates for each other, and Wallace has recently been finally acknowledged in the Natural History Museum. He's a very, very interesting man. And on my voyage, we actually had a Wallace specialist. Being an expedition vessel, we had geologists, we had marine biologists, we had this one particular guest speaker who had written books on Wallace and on the Wallace line. And that was a really interesting way to pass the time during sea days when we weren't out on deck looking for birds and whales and cetaceans and so on. Whales are cetaceans, so I don't know why I said and, but never mind. The other thing that really attracted me to this particular voyage was the marine side of things. I loved the ocean. I loved being in the ocean. I loved to snorkel. And from sitting next to our sister company, Dive Worldwide and Regal Dive, for many years, I was very familiar with the names of Ambon, of Wakatobi, of Mizul, and these famous water spots. Jacques Cousteau loved this area. Why would you not want to go and look for Nemo? And also all manner of coral, all manner of fish life. I saw my first lionfish here. And the key reason for that, this is known as the most biodiverse marine hotspot on the planet. And it's called the Coral Triangle. Now, the Coral Triangle doesn't quite extend as far east as this. This is a PowerPoint issue. I couldn't quite change the shape of the triangle. But in a nutshell, we're talking about areas of Malaysia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, parts of Timor, and the Philippines. So all within that triangle there. So the Coral Triangle, and the reason it is so incredibly diverse and known as the marine hotspot on our planet is predominantly due to one reason, the ITS. And in regular form, that is known as the Indonesian through flow. What that essentially means is that this is the largest movement of a body of water that we know on our planet. It controls the climate to a certain extent, but what is actually happening is the Pacific is squeezed through the Indonesian archipelago on its way to the Indian Ocean. And the Pacific is 30 centimeters higher in terms of sea level than the Indian. So you have a gradient as that water is coming through the archipelago and through the Coral Triangle into the Indian Ocean. You have trade winds helping it on its way. You have currents, you have upwellings of nutrients, and you've got underwater topography that all play a part. And the volume of water pushing through here, bringing nutrients to seagrass beds, to coral reefs, it's producing food for cetaceans, it's producing food for other marine life, for coral and fish. And the water volume is so great that we cannot refer to gallons or litres. We refer to spare drops. And to put that into perspective, one swerdrop, I'm not sure my pronunciation is great, this is after a Norwegian oceanographer, is equivalent to the movement of 1 million cubic meters of water per second. Now, I just need to try and take a minute to actually process that. That is huge, absolutely huge. And the Indonesian throughfall doesn't just involve one swerdrop, it involves 15 per annum. So it is a huge amount of water, and that accounts for the marine diversity. And that very much attracted me to this particular trip. So let's get on to it. Stop waffling, H. Okay, so our wildlife journey on this trip, having sailed east from Bali through past Lombok and therefore crossing the Wallace Line, we stopped on the island of Sumbawa, but our first wildlife experience was on Komodo, and I was ready for dragons. My gosh, I was excited to see them. What hadn't really entered my head is that they live on a tropical island. So you have got these incredible reefs and marine life literally on the doorstep of the Komodos. And I jested to my fellow travellers on my Zodiac as we left the Heritage Adventurer to come into shore early in the morning. We get there way before the national park is open to others. And that way we beat the crowds, because this is an area that does get very busy. So we were the first to land. As we came in by Zodiac, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great if there was just a dragon lying on the beach? You know, wouldn't that just be magic? Step off the Zodiac, there she is. Isn't she wonderful? All of her dribble, her reptilian characteristics. Oh my gosh, I thought she was the most magnificent thing I'd seen for quite some time. So this was my very first dragon. As you then walk past her, giving her obviously a wide berth and the respect that she needs, we are going past Timor deer, who undoubtedly also want to give these creatures the respect they deserve, because this is prey number one. We walk into the island and we're looking for yellow-crested cockatoos. They're endemic to this area. We'd see salmon-coloured later on. We'd see sulphur-crested in Australia later on. But here, this was one of our first target species, and we found it. As you walk through the island, you're following trails, and we had another female that came down, and she delicately drank from a pool, probably only 5 or 10 meters in front of us. So we just hunched down, we took our photographs, we watched her, and I thought she was really rather endearing. That's not to take away the power that these animals have, but I was absolutely transfixed. I thought they were fabulous. We moved on. There were males literally just horizontal on the path, next to the path. We, of course, walked around them. This one happened to amble right past us. This one, although he looks like he's coming directly towards us, he was actually using his tail to just slightly veer off to the side, and we obviously moved away to give him right of way, as we should. It amazed me how you could just squat on your haunches and watch these creatures. This is with my full zoom. This is a 600mm lens, but you could get fantastic detail. They don't always move particularly fast, and you could just sit and watch and observe them. And it was only as we were making our way back to the beach, to Zodiac, back to Heritage Adventurer, that we started to see the crowds arrive once the first boats arrived from nearby Flores. So getting in early is an absolute must. Later that day, just around the bay from where we'd seen the Komodos in the morning, we had our first incredible snorkel. And we had it in a very aptly named area, Pink Beach. Who'd have thought it? So Pink Beach, we had turtles, me and my snorkel buddy Jackie. We basically were just hovering over 2 or 3 turtles at a time. Hawksbill predominantly, but we did have a green here as well. All manner of lovely, brightly coloured fish. This was a fantastic and a quiet snorkel in terms of we were in a big, wide spaced out area. We weren't on top of each other, and it was a really wonderful way just to walk in off the beach and just go for a swim, go for a snorkel, or just relax if you preferred. Every evening we repositioned, and the following day we arrived on the island of Kodia. And my word, I could not believe the warmth of the welcome that we received here. Kodia only receives visitors from heritage expeditions once per year. So the local school had put on a performance of dance and song, but there was a sincerity in the welcome. Sometimes you go to these things overseas and it can feel a little bit contrived. Sorry if I'm being a bit cynical there. But here it was a genuine, warm welcome. People were so excited to see us. And we just walked along the island. There was a causeway, a rocky causeway from where you could walk to another island. And we could just walk through and watch the daily life of the fishermen. The reef is just behind here, all the stilt villages. It was really rather wonderful. After our village visit, we got into the water, of course. And this was where I came across my first banded sea snake. We were to see a number of these throughout the voyage. The coral was in fantastic condition, electric blue, tiny little fish, bright yellow ones that you can see here. But this was just a build up to the following day when we arrived at Wakatobi. Jacques Cousteau pretty much put this place on the map. You'll have to excuse me. And Wakatobi, if you are a diver or a marine enthusiast, this is hallowed ground. The reefs here are impeccable, and they were teeming with fish. So at ground level, this is what it looks like as you approach. We couldn't wait to get in that water. I bought an underwater camera purely for this trip and, leading on to others. And these are just a few of the snaps that we got. The clarity of the water, the colours on the coral, fan coral, brain coral, coral that looked like bran flakes all lumped together in a dish, others that looked, like lavender. I mean, it was just sensational. It was so clear, and there was so much fish around from, just tons and tons of different species, different colours, different shapes, different nose and mouth pieces, from Moorish idols to parrotfish to this square spot. It was fantastic. So getting into the water there and knowing that there was still so much more to come was brilliant. As we pushed further east, we're starting going northeast now, we went past numerous sperm whales. We were just sitting at lunch and I saw that 45-degree angle blow and I jumped up. We were sitting on the back deck and I jumped up and I was like, sperm whales, sperm whales, sperm whales. And I'm surprised the ship didn't topple over because we all rushed over to the port side to see them, and it was fantastic. Once we had traversed, we're about halfway between Bali and Raja Ampat, West Papua at this point, and we got to 2 rather wonderful islands called Buru and Seram, respectively. And again, they were characterized by these stilt villages where we were just given a hero's welcome. We could walk through the markets, we could walk through town. People wanted to talk about football, they wanted to talk about Man United, obviously. It was just, again, the warmest of welcome. But here, I wanted to go birding, and we had 2 ornithologists that were part of the trip. And a group, you signed up on a nightly basis for what you wanted to do the following day. And we went birding. And I wasn't quite prepared for how colourful, how many species there were. Both Buru and Saram have quite high levels of endemism and also near endemism. And we came across a number of species that we really were high on our hit list, from eclectus parrot to honey creepers, there were flower peckers, you name it. There were just masses and masses of birds, and we would just walk through on roads or trails quietly, and the ornithologist was superb. One of them had seen, I think, 10,500 species, which is not far off most of the species in the world, and the other one was nearing 7 or 8. So they knew their stuff, and they were both very, very good at what they did. But excitement levels were mounting. We were approaching Raja Ampat. Raja Ampat is a small group of islands off the northwest coast of West Papua itself, and it's named after 4 key islands known as the 4 Kings. And this was really a highlight. When I spoke to other people on board, they were there for the same reasons that I was. They were there for Komodos, for birds of paradise, for Raja Ampat, and for whale sharks. They really were the 4 key things that everybody wanted to see. So it is a spectacular area. It first came onto my radar in, I think, 2018 or 2019, when we first began to charter small ships in this area. And it's just a stunningly beautiful cast limestone landscape of hundreds and hundreds of these tiny wee islands, snorkel spots in between, dive spots as well if you're a diver. And it's just majestic, absolutely beautiful. And we went on zodiac excursions. We were able to climb 1 or 2 of these to viewpoints where you could look down and see the colours in the ocean and see the vegetation clinging to practically vertical cliffs. This is what it looks like at ground level. We were just negotiating them by zodiac. So I've just put this zodiac in to give you a sense of perspective down in the bottom right-hand corner. We had herons, sea eagles. I mean, it was just spectacular. And we had 3 full days in this area just to lap it up. We got into the water as often as we could. There were quite a few stingers around, so people were swimming in wetsuits or in rash vests and leggings. However, it was just mind-blowing. The state of the coral. We could see jellyfish around. They have stingless jellyfish in this area, which is rather marvelous. We could see rabbitfish, the yellow, black and grey ones that you've got here next to this parrotfish. We could see boxfish like you've got here. The colours are not being given justice really in my photos here. Damselfish, they're as common as much, but they are beautiful. And when the light hits them, they go from turquoise to blue to silver to translucent. It's quite fantastic. And during our time in Raja Ampat, we spent time in Mutu's Island. This is paradise. This is essentially your bounty advert or your lilt advert if you go back to the 80s like I do. And we walked along the beach here, and immediately what hit us was the cultural difference. We'd started in Hindu Bali. We'd gone through Muslim Sumbawa and Kodia. We were now very, very much in Melanesia, and it showed. And again, the welcomes here, people were starting to wear straw shirts, painting their faces much more in kind of Papuan style. But again, the welcome was just fantastic. We get walking through, we had a game of football here. I'm still having my physio on my knee as a result of slipping on some seaweed there in a rather overzealous attack up the left wing. There are beach kingfishers, there were parrots, there were lories, there were just all sorts of wonderful wildlife around. And we also were able to give something back. We were able to help plant mangroves because of the threat of tsunami in this area. So anything that can limit the power of the ocean is very welcome. Then part of Raja Ampat the piece de la resistance, some might say, was going to the island of Wajio. And here my dream came true and I got to see this little fella, my Wilson's bird of paradise. This is not my image. They are ground displayers, which means that we were in a hide, well, not a hide really. We were at the top of an incline on some seating that had been made by stringing bamboo poles together because the lek locations change year on year, and they build a small observation area where you sit quietly for up to an hour or two and you look down. And what you're looking at is essentially just a cleared piece of earth on the forest floor many meters below you. When this Wilson's male finally turns up, you are not prepared for how small he is, but also for how electrifying his coloration is. That blue on the top of his head is electric blue. That yellow, that red is electric red. And those legs, they come across as bright purple, like literally bright purple. He is a little dude, this chap. You cannot miss him. He's a traffic light in the middle of a very dark and damp rainforest. And there is no other word to describe him other than absolutely fabulous. So I thought all my Christmases had come at once watching him. He came repeatedly, and then a female arrived, and he did the most incredible thing. He fanned out his chest feathers, and you don't notice his chest because it's against the earth and it's dark. When he fans that out, it is emerald electric green, like an Elizabethan ruff. Absolutely amazing. Honestly, you just have to go. It's brilliant. You could choose to either go to the Wilson's Bird of Paradise observation point, or you could go to this one, which was the Red Bird of Paradise. So I chose the Wilson's. The Red Bird of Paradise, its lekking site is right up in the canopy of trees, and I knew that I just didn't have the photographic prowess to take photographs up into light. And also it was the Wilsons that had stolen my heart many years ago. But the people that did see the red thought he was absolutely fantastic as well. So you had to choose one or other. It was a 3 a.m. start. It was worth every minute of the journey up there, sliding around in mud in 4x4s over these tiny little paths. And then we walked for probably about a kilometre. Not a steep gradient, but definitely an uphill, but it was worth every single second. These are fabulous creatures, and I really would love to go back and see some more. After that, we had another 3 a.m. start. We've moved again, and we're now moving towards the mainland. Well, in fact, we are on the mainland of West Papua, which is the western side of the island of New Guinea that is shared between Indonesia in the west and Papua New Guinea in the east. And we got to the Arfak Mountains. And it was actually from here, very close to here, that Wallace first set foot in what is now West Papua. And this particular excursion, we, according to mobility and speed, there were a number of hides that we could visit within the Arfak Mountains to potentially try and see 2 or 3, even more species of birds of paradise. This one I did see, and he is the Magnificent. This is not one of my photographs, I'm ashamed to admit, but we saw him clearly. Didn't need binoculars, but he was flitting around so much that I've decided to show him off in all his glory using a much better image. Now, from behind, he doesn't look particularly impressive, but when he turns around, that emerald green, look at that blue eye stripe that matches magnificent feet. His tail looks blue there. When you see it in other lights, it looks green. So, for example, if we turn back here, it looks turquoise. So he was fabulous, and he is not a ground or a canopy lek displayer. He tends to be probably at about my height above the ground in the trees. So easier to see in some respects. So I saw this one. He was absolutely fabulous. I saw the female as well, and they were just feeding together. Some other clients saw this fabulous chap, a magnificent rifle bird. And I also saw this one. Now, this doesn't look like much, does it? Poor little fella. He's got some serious competition here, but he's a busy, busy bee. This is a Fogelkop bowerbird. So named, he might not look like much. Apologies to him, but this is what he makes. These are his bowers. And if you've seen on Attenborough, there are certain birds of paradise that have a thing for all things blue. Fogelkop bowerbird is one of them. We were finding bottle tops that were blue, sometimes orange, but there were lots of little bits of human, which is not great, obviously, but interesting how they are utilizing, bright colors to try and attract the female towards checking out their bower and then maybe making babies, which is quite exciting. So, leaving the birds of paradise behind us, we moved on to another key highlight of this trip. We're now off the north coast of West Papua, and we're at Cenderawasih Marine Park. And Simon Reeves has recently talked about these particular whale shark and fishing stations on the telly. There's quite a lot of, sort of interest in them. But essentially, the fishermen here create these floating platforms from which they drop a fishing net at sundown. They slowly lift that fishing net from the seabed up onto this floating platform the following morning, thereby capturing fish within it. And what they began to notice is that the whale sharks clearly were quite interested in their prey and in their catch. So they started throwing a few to the whale sharks so they could make money essentially from fishing, and also a booming ecotourism initiative. And I was so excited after my 2 or 3 swims, I can't remember how many it was with these guys, that I declared upon getting out, I love this animal so much I'm going to get myself a tattoo of it. I have yet to put my money where my mouth is. But honestly, swimming with these guys is nothing short of marvelousness. They come so close. You're just basically underneath, just on the edges of that bagan, that fishing platform. We had 5 and they were coming up from all directions. You were having to swim out of the way of them. They have no spatial awareness, which is really rather wonderful. And I mean, they just kept on coming. They come up mouths agape like that. They take their fill, they swim back down under, and then they come around and they do it again, but then they come from a different direction. And then there's 2 or 3 fighting for the fish in front of you, and you just don't know what to do with yourself. It is absolutely fabulous. And obviously, I'm there on an expedition vessel. There's a lot of people that want to get into the water to do this. But I can honestly say it was so well managed. We would have 2 zodiacs in at a time. We were spread out on different sides of the bagan. That we all had fantastic experiences, and these whale sharks just kept on coming. So, on my wish list, Komodo dragons, tick. Whale sharks, tick. Birds of paradise, tick. Raja Ampat, tick. But it wasn't over yet. So, we went on and we visited a few more little-known islands, Biak first and then followed by Liki. Biak was actually, as much of this area was, occupied by the Japanese forces during World War II. And Biak has a very poignant history in terms of battles between the US Allied forces and the Japanese. 6,000 or 7,000 Japanese lost their lives here compared to a few hundred allies. But it's a very poignant place. A lot of the group went to visit caves where you can still see World War II relics. I went birding here, so I missed this, but it is a fascinating part of the world with an awful lot in terms of culture, in terms of its checkered history, Obviously, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British, they went through these Spice Islands. They all wanted a little bit of it during colonial times. So in addition to the wildlife and the incredible scenery, there is a lot that this particular voyage gave us access to. On my birding visit, we got fantastic number of endemics as well. We also got this rather wonderful little fella. I'm pretty much in love with fruit doves. Who knew a dove could be the prettiest thing? There are so many permutations of different fruit doves through New Guinea. This is a geelvink, and we saw it, and it was absolutely marvellous. And after a jam-packed trip, we just needed a little bit of R&R. So we got a little bit of R&R by spending time on these desert islands. This image was actually displayed in one of the corridors on the ship, and I was like, oh, I hope we're going there. That looks rather marvellous. Well, I got chatting to the executive chef on the trip because I do quite like my food, and he had a drone and he put it up when we got here. So thanks to him, this is one of his pictures, which he's very pleased for me to use. So thank you again. And at ground level, this was taken by my little underwater camera, and I had the camera in one hand. I was resting my arms on one of those noodles that you use for flotation devices in the water, and I had a rum cocktail in the other. So all was right in the world for our afternoon spent here. Next up, we were now on the north coast of West Papua. So we pulled into the capital of West Papua province, and that's Jayapura. And from here, we went up to the very visually pleasing Lake Sentani. This was a bit of culture. There are stilt villages. There are lots of tribes up here, but a very scenic part of the world in which to spend a day before we then crossed over the border into Papua New Guinea. All the formalities were taken care of by the crew, so we didn't have to join any immigration or any customs lines. We literally woke up one day and we were now in Papua New Guinea, so it was all very, very easy. And we were on the Sepik River, and the Sepik River has long held a place in my imagination, somewhere I've always wanted to go, and we got to see the dragon dance. And again, we just spent a few hours going out on the water, bird watching, watching the villagers put on this incredible display for us, and just sort of chatting to the locals, for want of better words, supporting them by buying their wares. And it was just a very limited introduction to Papua New Guinea, but it was wonderful. And again, the welcomes were warm, they were sincere. This little chap just loved posing for photographs, and that's the Sepik River that you can see behind him. And from our cruise there, we saw imperial pigeons, we saw white-bellied sea eagle like you've got here. We saw all manner of bird life. It really was rather special. And that was a wonderful way in which to bring our trip to a close. So we saw an awful lot over 17 nights. We were busy, but it was fabulous, and it ticked everything that I wanted to see. My appetite has been whet for another visit to Papua New Guinea, and it would be very easy to extend your stay. Quite a few people on my trip did. The fact they were already in Papua New Guinea, they extended so they could find further birds of paradise, potentially look for tree kangaroos and so on. Other people on board didn't just limit themselves to PNG. The ship continues. So we flew down to Cairns to end our trip, but the ship continues with its repositioning down towards New Zealand, and it goes through the Solomon Islands. So quite a lot of people were doing these two trips back to back, Bali to Papua New Guinea and then Papua New Guinea to the Solomon Islands, spending about 3.5, 4 weeks on board. And that repositioning continues when the Heritage Adventurer comes all the way down to New Zealand, where it is based, and then heads into the sub-Antarctic islands and down into the Ross Sea, where it spends the austral summer. Just a quick mention of the sub-Antarctic islands. If they're on your list, and why wouldn't they be, there are umpteen penguin species. This is albatross central. This is a royal southern albatross. this king penguins on Macquarie Island, which is actually an Australian island down in the subantarctics. There's a lot of wildlife down here, and it's a very different experience. From a birding perspective, it is phenomenal. From a wilderness perspective, it is phenomenal. So although I digress from Indonesia, if this takes your fancy, just keep an eye on our e-news. We may be working on a little something. That's all I'm going to say. And while we're in New Zealand, Heritage also have a much smaller vessel, this one, Heritage Explorer, that we are actually chartering for a cruise, private charter for a cruise around Fiordland and offshore in early 2028. So that might also pique your fancy. But I digress. Let's get back to Indonesia. And we're almost done, don't worry, because I'm aware that I've been talking for 40 minutes. Right, so while we're in Indonesia, not everybody has their sea legs or wants to travel, as part of 130 odd people. So there are other ways and means of seeing what Indonesia has to offer. As we've already been to Raja Ampat, I'm going to stick with Raja Ampat for now. We are able to offer Raja Ampat birds of paradise and wildlife. This is a trip. We fly you out via Jakarta to Kaimana in West Papua, and you sail to Sorong in West Papua. So this is basically 9 nights aboard this rather wonderful vessel here. And this is called the Katerina, and she has 6 cabins and 6 cabins over only. So it's 12 people. And we're able to organise space on board her. We have privately chartered her in the past, but now we can offer space on scheduled departures with her. And this would spend 9 nights on a small vessel in the Raja Ampat area. Fabulous. So you'll be traversing all of these lovely bays. You'll be snorkeling. You'll be doing walks. You'll go to waterfalls. And during that time, there will be a whale shark experience. As with everything, they're not guaranteed, but we very much hope that you will see them. There's potential for migrating whales, brooders in particular, as shown here. And there are not 1, not 2, but 3 potential birds of paradise that you might see. This one is the lesser, our beautiful Wilsons, once again, and also the red bird of paradise. So whale sharks, birds of paradise, Raja Ampat. No Komodo dragons on this one, but if those 3 take your fancy, then there are frequent departures, usually October, November, or September, October, November. That is the key season as they come out of monsoon and into the drier months. There is another trip that we can offer as well in Indonesia, and this is quite different. Wildlife of Indonesia with Mike Dilger. You may have seen him on the telly. If you've met him in real life, he makes me look like a wallflower. That's all I'm going to say. I love him. He's an absolute legend of a bloke, and he is also a superb naturalist. He leads loads of trips for us now, and rainforests are his bag. So this is very different. Rainforest to start, and in 2 of the 3 locations that you will essentially visit. We start in Sulawesi, we continue over in Sumatra, and then we finish in the Komodo area. Okay, so 2 rainforested regions and then Komodo dragons and more at the end. So let's look at this in a bit more detail. Again, we fly you into Jakarta, and from there we fly you over to the northeastern tip of Sulawesi. If you can see my mouse, Sulawesi is this right in the centre of your screen. It's a very odd shape. It's a little bit like a kind of claw, if you like. So there's your thumb, and then there's the rest of your fingers coming down here. And in the far northeastern corner is a place called Tankoko National Park. Nick Garbett has done trips for us here in the past, and indeed he has supplied quite a few of the photographs, so thank you very much, Nick. And perhaps the most famous inhabitant of Tankoko National Park is the crested black macaque. Very, very what's the word, alluring creature. They often hang out in packs that can be quite strong, hundreds at times, although you're likely to see more diurnal activity in smaller groups. But very, very relatable creature, wonderful photographic opportunities. And also, this is the Sulawesi bear couscous, which we have a good chance of seeing during our 3 nights in the area. What we do is we go out on walks through the rainforest, morning walks and also afternoon walks. And in the afternoon, we're going to lead into the evening and we're going to be walking back at night. And that is the time when these guys are more busy. This is another endemic. This is a spectral tarsier. And they are much more alive at night when they're coming out looking for grubs, katydids, and various insects. In the rainforest, it's going to be noisy. It's going to be fantastic bird life, from knobbed hornbill right the way through to lilac kingfisher. But if you have been with Mike, or if you're familiar with him, he loves a bit of herping. So he will be looking for snakes. He will be looking for frogs. He likes the macro stuff, the insects. And he's a mind of knowledge about all of these little critters. So this oriental whip snake, we hope that you would see, perhaps not as close as this, who knows. But from Tangkoko, we then fly back through Jakarta and we fly to the northwest of the Indonesian archipelago and we fly to the northern part of Sumatra. 3 to 4 hours away from Medan Airport, we then get you to Gunung Lusa National Park and we have 4 nights in another heavily rainforested area known as one of the most biodiverse areas within Indonesia. Here, key species that we're looking for, Sumatran orangutan. They are harder to find here, but with 4 nights, we have a very good chance of seeing them. We will be looking for the fruiting trees. We will be walking on foot, potentially through streams. So you do need leech socks, but the walks are not hard going. They're taken at a very gentle pace. They're a regular stops because, of course, this is a wildlife trip and we want to stop and we want to find wildlife. In addition, Thomas's leaf monkey. Have you ever seen a Paddington hard stare on any other creature than Paddington? This is it. If you Google these guys, Thomas's leaf monkey, every single picture, they look angry. But there are gibbons, Lar gibbon in this case. There's all manner of wonderful wildlife in Gunung Lusa. So between Tangkoko and Gunung Lusa, those are your rainforested. Immerse yourself in those environments and Mike will help you find as much as he possibly can, and he loves it. Once again, you fly back through Jakarta, and then on the last point of this particular trip, you end up in Komodo. So we have 1 night in Flores, and then we have 4 nights aboard Tiger Blue. How beautiful is she? She's another converted, stunning, stunning ship. And on her, you will go to the island of Komodo. There are actually 4 islands made up of Komodo National Park. So it's more likely that you're going to spend time actually on Rinca or Rinsa, depending on who you speak to. It is generally considered slightly quieter on that island in terms of crowds. But you have potential for Komodo dragon, of course, just as much there. And also something that Jordan has done and that he recently shared a video of with me. And my gosh, it was amazing. Manta ray snorkel. There is a manta cleaning station in the area and we hope to get you in the water with it for the most sublime flybys by these wonderful filter feeders. And honestly, this video of Jordan's, if I could have put it in the presentation, I would have, but I only saw it 5 minutes before we went live. But it was unreal. The visibility is the key thing. Absolutely fantastic. It does look like this in general. Again, more potential for other snorkeling with turtles, with marine fish, over coral, etc. So that is Mike's trip. Finally, how about a super yacht? We also are able to offer super yacht type holidays within the Raja Ampat area and within Indonesia. This is a yacht called Aqua Blue. Drop the E, it's Aqua Blue, BLU, and she is permanently in Indonesia. So if you fancy some real indulgence, one of my colleagues went on this at the end of last year, and it really was rather indulgent. So yeah, give it a whirl. There's all manner of ways in which we can get you to the magical destination that is Indonesia. So if, like Wallace, pictured here as an older man, if, like Wallace, we have inspired you to come with us to Indonesia, these are your options. You've got Indonesia Wildlife Highlights on board Heritage Adventurer, the trip that I did last year. You have Mike Dilger's trip that will go to Sulawesi, to Sumatra, and then to Komodo. So no whale sharks on that one. You've got Raja Ampat's Bird of Paradise and Wildlife, the small ship for 9 nights through Raja Ampat. No Komodos on that one. And you've got super yachting. What is not to love? So that's all from me. So we're going to bring Jordan back, if he's still awake. And he's going to launch a poll for us. But before he does that, well, no, do you want to go for it? Do you want to launch the poll, Jordan, and then we can go through any questions that might have come in? I can see there's been a few. I just haven't had a chance to read
them. So that poll should be live for everyone to choose any travel plans that for trips you might want to go on.
Brilliant.
And yeah, I'm sure you will after that.
Oh, I hope so, yeah. So that first one was my trip on Heritage Adventurer, the second one with Mike Dilger, Mike the Man Dilger, and then the third one, Raja Ampat's 9 nights on Katarina. So, stunning. All right, Jordan, hit me if we had any questions.
Yeah, we've got a few questions. So I'll share those with you now.
Okay.
So first of all, for the kind of what temperatures can people expect, both kind of the actual temperature and in terms of in the water?
Oh, hot. Steamy, humid, but rather wonderful. I like the heat. So I would say that we were in early 30s to mid 30s would be the air temperature. But it is a humid heat, which is why it's great to get in the water as much as you can. Water temperatures were absolutely stunning. We were talking 28, 29, 30 degrees. So it was like bath water. So as I think I said in the presentation, quite a few people did wear wetsuits. But there's no need to. I just wore rash vests and leggings. And that was quite useful because we did at quite a few places in Raja Ampat, there were stingers, small jellyfish. They weren't major, but you just had to kind of look out for them as you were going through. So, but temperatures in general were warm, lovely. You don't need many clothes. You don't need to dress up for dinner on any of these trips either. So you can leave your pearls at home, you can leave your cocktail dresses at home and just wear what you like. The only restriction on Heritage is that you must wear shoes at all time in case of people dropping glasses and stuff like that. But yeah, nice and warm.
Okay, no, lovely. Right, so what about someone asked about a comparison between Malaysian and Indonesian Borneo?
Yes. A gentleman contacted our marketing team earlier today to ask about the difference. In terms of Indonesia, so I mean the key crossover, I suppose, is going to be orangutans and proboscis monkeys, macaques, that sort of thing, because whale sharks and Komodos are Indonesia only in this instance. So in terms of seeing orangutans, the Sumatra orangutan is more rare, but with 4 nights in Gunung Lusa, we do feel that we've got a very good chance. We will be looking for the fruiting trees in particular, and we will spend, we will be out for walks for 3 hours or so, 4 hours potentially at a time looking for them. Indonesian Borneo, Kalimantan, which is the southern part of Borneo, Although I didn't mention that in this particular presentation, we are able, there's a very well-known camp called Camp Leakey, which is accessed by boat, longboats, and that used to be a rehab centre for orangutans, and you now get a lot of the descendants of rescued and released orangutans coming. So they are completely wild orangutans, but they are relatively easily seen. Very good for proboscis monkeys as well. But in terms of Borneo, it is generally considered that Sabah, which is Malaysian Borneo, is more biodiverse. You have a chance of seeing orangutans on the Kinabatangan River up there, proboscis monkeys very much on the Kinabatangan River, and elephant on the Kinabatangan River. So it's a little bit harder in Sumatra, but we are quietly confident, and we are, with 4 nights, we feel you've got a realistic chance there. Yeah. Hopefully that answers that.
Okay, brilliant. Fantastic. Yeah, and also we've had another question about elephants and tigers in Gunung Lasur, and basically they are there, but unfortunately they are incredibly, incredibly difficult to find. So it's not something that we would imagine that you would be able to see. You would be extraordinarily lucky if you were to go there and see
Yeah.
elephants or tigers.
I mean, they have rhino, they have, clouded leopard, but the chance of seeing them is pretty much null and void. So we certainly would not advocate going there with the hope of seeing them. Chances are you won't. So we would rather just, kind of be more realistic and say we will focus our efforts on orangutans, and primarily primates. That part of Sumatra is teeming with different primates, and they will be our focus when we're on Sumatra. Yeah.
Brilliant. And
Anything
then
else?
someone's asked how much they'd miss out on. Yeah, there's a few. We've still got a few more. Someone's asked how much they'd miss out on if they didn't join in with the snorkeling on
Oh,
these trips around here.
yeah. I mean, the snorkeling is unreal because of the Indonesian through flow. It is unreal. But to be honest, if you're on a Zodiac and you just look down, you're going to see. We saw jellyfish just from Zodiacs, just going past them, fish. What you don't see very much of are sharks. Unfortunately, they have been fished out from the areas that I went to. Anyway, I had one shark sighting, and that was on my very last snorkel. But there were quite a lot of people on the trip that I did aboard Heritage that didn't snorkel for various reasons. And they did Zodiac rides, or they did village visits, they did birding. There were so many experts on board, and they are all out on the excursions with you. I don't, and they did Zodiacs to the whale sharks as well. So although they didn't get in the water with them, you could still clearly see them, literally just underneath the water surface. So if you can snorkel, I would encourage it. And we had a number of marine biologists on board, so they will help you. It's not the end of the world if you don't. There were plenty of people on board my trip that didn't go in the water, had no intention of going in the water, and still had a fabulous time.
Okay, fantastic. So we've still got a few more. So one of them, someone's going to do some diving in March 2028, and they were curious about extension options in March. So I mean, I think the world is your oyster there, isn't it? There's plenty to do. It's still a good time. But what do you think?
Oh, to be honest, I'd need to look into it. Our dive team will, that they know much more about the diving element of it. And then we can sometimes work together just to have a look at what extension options would be available. But certainly going up to Sumatra, going up to Borneo, it will be potentially starting to get wet. But there would definitely be options, but we just need to look into them based on what you're ideally hoping to see.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, we can always look into that for you if you
Mm,
want to send us an email.
yeah,
And then insects. So there are lots of biting insects in the rainforests.
yes, yeah, of course there are. You can't sugarcoat that. But we just wore like these safari shirts and long pants on every excursion. Tucked our trousers into our socks. Checked ourselves for leeches. I did have a couple of leeches, particularly on one of on Saram. Yeah, you just pile on the mozzie stuff, eat lots of garlic, and just wear long sleeves and trousers. But yeah, they're there. Of course, they are. They thrive in a moist, humid rainforest environment, so you can't deny that. But it shouldn't put you off. There are ways and means around it. Some people were wearing those hats, like a wide brimmed hat, but had put netting down it already, and that seemed to me a pretty genius idea. So yeah, you can prepare yourself for to limit. But I think the fact that we were on a boat and going back to the boat every day, on the boat there's no biting bugs. So you're not sleeping in the rainforest like you might be on Mike Dilger's trip or on another. So we were just going in for a few hours at a time. So that worked quite nicely.
Okay,
Mm.
fantastic. Thanks very much, H. The questions keep coming in.
Okay.
Are there plenty of opportunities for macro photography? I
Oh
imagine there
yeah.
must be.
Yeah, walking along on any of the forest trails, there would be loads and loads. We had a fantastic guy called Rod. And he was a naturalist. He'd been going to Indonesia for I don't know 40 years or something, and he would just walk ahead of us and just turn leaves over and find bugs and beetles and all sorts. So yes, absolutely, yeah. Every time you're on land, you just have a look. I mean, I heard in Antarctica there are even people who are doing macro underwater now. So if you've got the right crew, then yeah, the opportunities are there definitely. And there's a lot of you can just do
No,
your own thing on these village visits. So it's not like you're herded from one point to the other. You're basically given a time that you must be back for the last zodiac, and you can go off and do your own thing. So you don't have to join the birding walk or the whatever walk or the whatever walk. You can literally do your own thing and then just go and find your own leaves to turn over. No worries whatsoever.
yeah, and I'm sure there's no shortage of fantastic macro subjects when you're in that
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
One on a similar to before. How bad are the jellyfish stings?
We
I
had
mean,
a
I
couple
don't
of
know, but you
people.
might.
Yeah, we had a couple of people who got stung. It was very mild. The crew had vinegar, and nobody resorted to what they do in Friends. Yeah, the crew had vinegar with them. There's a ship doctor on Heritage. There's a medic that comes on every excursion. So one or two people did get stung, but they were back in the water, that same day. So it wasn't a biggie.
Okay, that's brilliant. And just one last question, which might be more difficult, might be easier, probably more difficult. What's your favorite trip of all time, and where can people meet you in 2026?
Oh my gosh. Okay, the easy thing, 2026. Okay, next trip is Galapagos, then Azores, then Swalu in the Kalahari, then Brazil, then the Kalahari again, and then Zambia, and then Norway swimming with orcas. So that's where you can see me for the year, and I still need to plan holidays. That's the easy bit. Favorite trip of all time. Oh gosh. Well, it would have to be Africa or Baja, Africa and Baja. So a safari followed by a whale safari, followed by snorkeling with humpbacks in Dominican Republic. There you go.
What a trip that is.
Oh, it was amazing.
That would be incredible.
You missed it. Chris and I were part of it a month ago. You can get the recording. It's been a busy start to the year. It's been amazing. Well, that's very hard. That's like saying, what's your favourite chocolate? You just can't do it.
That was, yeah, definitely the hardest question. You had to save it for till last so we could stun you with it. But no, that's all, H. That was absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for sharing that with sharing that with us all this evening. It was brilliant.
Great. All right. Well, yeah, we better move on to the last slide, haven't we? I always forget this one. Okay, because we're coming to the end of our sort of early 2026 tours. Look, we've only got two left more. We've got Colombia and southern Chile. But yeah, that's your job. Sorry, Jordan. I'll shut up. Go on.
No, there's no worries. So, as Helen's mentioned, we've got two more Discover Wildlife talks coming up. We've got Colombia next week with Rob Smith, and then we've got one more on Southern Chile the following week. We've also just launched our brand new photography brochure. So, if you're interested, please get in touch. We'll get that sent out to you. And we're also going to be exhibiting at the photography show this weekend at the NEC in Birmingham. So if you're around, come say hello. A few members of the team are going to be there, and I'm sure they'd love to chat with you.
Yeah.
So I just want to say one last big thank you to Helen for another brilliant talk, as always. She always brings so much passion and enthusiasm to these things. And
Quite
yeah,
often.
absolutely fantastic. Have a great evening, guys. Thanks for coming along, and yeah, we'll hopefully see you soon.